The sun was a merciless god that day, blazing down on the vast emptiness of the Arizona desert, its heat shimmering over the endless dunes like waves of fire. Vultures circled high above the horizon, their shadows flickering across the cracked earth where a lone figure crawled through the dust. His name was Tahoma, a proud Apache warrior who once rode with the thunder of his people, but now his tribe was gone, his horse shot beneath him, his wounds raw and open beneath the sun's cruel gaze. The bluecoats had come at dawn, men in dust-stained uniforms, faces hardened by orders and fear, surrounding the small Apache camp, firing without warning. They called it justice, but it was vengeance for the raids, for the cattle stolen, for the white man's pride wounded by resistance. When the smoke cleared, the camp was gone, and only Tahoma, bloodied but breathing, was left behind in the chaos. They tied him to a post, spat at his feet, and when the sergeant grew tired of taunting him, they cut the ropes and rode off, leaving him for the desert to finish. For 2 days he wandered, delirious from thirst, his tongue swollen and his vision blurring into ghosts, his mother's voice calling him home, his father's proud silhouette standing by the river, his sister's laughter echoing in the wind. But they were all gone, and only the silence of the desert answered. The sand burned beneath his knees, and when he collapsed for the 3rd time, he thought it would be the last. He pressed his cheek to the ground, feeling the pulse of the earth, and whispered a prayer to the Great Spirit to take him home. But fate, cruel and unpredictable, was not ready to let him go. Miles away, a wagon creaked over the desert trail, driven by a young woman whose hands were blistered and raw from holding the reins. Her name was Clara Weston, a widow not yet 23, who had buried her husband near the Rio Verde after a fever took him in the night. She had sold what little she had left and set out toward the mining town of Gila Bend, hoping to find work as a teacher or maybe a seamstress. The world had hardened her heart, but it hadn't killed the kindness in her eyes, and when she saw the dark figure lying motionless in the distance, she felt a pull she couldn't ignore. "God help me," she murmured, stopping the wagon. She climbed down, her boots sinking into the hot sand, and approached cautiously. When she turned the body over, the breath caught in her throat. He was an Apache, skin burned and bruised, hair matted with blood, a deep cut running across his chest. Every instinct screamed danger. Every story she'd heard told her to leave him. But the faint rise and fall of his chest made her hesitate. "You're still breathing," she whispered, her voice trembling. She fetched her canteen, lifted his head, and let a trickle of water touch his lips. He stirred, his eyes flickering open, dark and wild like an animal cornered. For a moment she thought he might attack her, but then he groaned and fell back into unconsciousness. Clara looked around. No one in sight, no cavalry, no townsfolk, just her and the dying man. "You'll get me killed," she said softly, but her hands were already moving, tearing a strip from her skirt to bind his wound. She dragged him into the shade of a rock outcrop, working until her arms ached, until she could lift him no farther. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in bruised orange light, and as the desert cooled, Clara built a small fire. She watched him as he slept, his breathing shallow but steady, and wondered what kind of man he had been before the desert claimed him. When dawn came, he opened his eyes again, and this time they were clear. He stared at her with the wary suspicion of a man who had seen too much betrayal. "Why?" he rasped, his voice broken. Clara hesitated. "Because you were dying." He studied her face, confusion and pain mingling in his gaze. "White woman," he muttered. "Why help Apache?" She didn't answer right away. Maybe it was guilt. Her husband had once ridden with a militia that hunted men like him. Maybe it was something deeper, something she couldn't name. "No one deserves to die alone," she said finally. For a long time, neither spoke. The wind whispered through the canyons, carrying with it the smell of rain far away. When she handed him more water, his fingers brushed hers, rough and warm, and she felt a strange current pass between them. Days passed. She stayed, tending to his wounds, cooking what little food she had left. He tried to move, to stand, but his legs gave out beneath him. "You should go," he told her one evening. They will come back. Bluecoats. They kill you if they find you with me. She looked at him across the fire. Then we both die, she said simply. He didn't understand her kind of courage. It frightened him more than death itself. By the 5th day, he was strong enough to walk a few steps. He watched her hitch the mule, load the wagon, and offered no protest when she helped him climb in. They traveled together, speaking little, the silence between them filled with things they didn't yet trust words to carry. Once, when a rattlesnake crossed their path, she screamed, and he killed it with a single throw of his knife. She stared at him, breathing hard, and he only said, "Snake never strikes if you watch where you step." It became a kind of lesson, one she would remember. The land grew harsher as they moved west, and one evening a sandstorm rolled in from the horizon, an angry wall of dust and wind that swallowed the sun. They took shelter behind the wagon, huddling close as the world roared around them. Clara pressed her face against his shoulder, her heart pounding. When the storm passed, she realized his arm was around her, holding her as though she was something fragile and precious. Neither spoke of it afterward, but something had shifted. They reached an old trading post, abandoned, half collapsed, and decided to rest there. Clara boiled coffee while Tahoma scouted the area, his instincts sharp despite his injuries. He found signs of soldiers, hoof prints, ashes from a campfire, and his jaw tightened. "We go tomorrow," he said. She nodded, though part of her didn't want to leave. That night, beneath the stars, he told her pieces of his story, how his people had been driven from their land, how his brother was shot while waving a white flag, how he had promised his mother he would never surrender. His voice was quiet, filled with the kind of pain that only silence could carry. Clara listened, tears glistening in the firelight. When he finished, he looked at her and said, "You are not like the others." She smiled faintly. "Maybe I'm just tired of hate."